Marcus Chen had always been the kind of person who noticed details others missed. As a xenobiologist aboard the research vessel Horizon's Edge, he spent his days cataloging the subtle differences between alien species, documenting their unique characteristics with the precision of a scholar and the wonder of a child. So when the Zephyrian delegation boarded their ship for the first formal diplomatic contact between their species, Marcus found himself studying their features with genuine fascination rather than the nervous tension that gripped most of his crewmates. The Zephyrians were a sight to behold. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with elegant, elongated limbs, their skin shimmered with an opalescent quality that shifted between deep purples and silver blues depending on the lighting. Their faces were angular yet graceful, with high cheekbones and pointed ears that reminded Marcus of ancient Earth folklore about elves. But it was their eyes that truly captured his attention, large, multifaceted orbs that seemed to contain entire galaxies within their depths, swirling with colors that had no names in any human language. Captain Rodriguez had briefed the crew extensively about Zephyrian customs. Their society was built on rigid hierarchies and complex social protocols. The slightest misstep could doom the fragile alliance Earth desperately needed. The Zephyrians possessed technology that could revolutionize human space travel, while humanity offered something the Zephyrians valued greatly: creativity and adaptability that their highly structured society had somehow lost over millennia. The delegation was led by Princess Lyralii, daughter of the Zephyrian Empress and heir to their vast stellar empire. She moved with a fluid grace that made even the artificial gravity of the ship seem inadequate to contain her ethereal presence. Her retinue followed in perfect formation, their expressions unreadable as they were escorted to the main conference room. Marcus watched from the observation deck as the formal ceremonies began. Captain Rodriguez delivered the prepared speeches with diplomatic precision, while the princess responded with equally formal phrases that had been translated by their universal communicators. The entire exchange felt sterile, almost mechanical, despite its historic significance. Hours passed as the delegations discussed trade agreements and territorial boundaries. Marcus remained at his post, officially there to provide biological expertise if needed, but mostly serving as an observer. He noticed how the princess's eyes would occasionally dart toward the viewport, as if longing to see the stars beyond the confines of the ship. There was something almost melancholy in her expression, a loneliness that transcended species barriers. As the formal sessions concluded and the groups began to disperse for individual meetings, Marcus found himself walking the same corridor as Princess Lyralii and her small personal guard. The translator devices allowed for real-time communication, but the conversation between the princess and her advisors was stilted, focused entirely on protocol and strategy. Marcus sensed an opportunity, perhaps the only one he would ever have. The princess paused near one of the ship's large viewports, gazing out at the nebula that painted the surrounding space in brilliant shades of pink and gold. Her guard maintained a respectful distance, giving her a moment of what appeared to be private contemplation. Marcus approached carefully, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Your Highness," he said softly, activating his translator. "I hope I'm not intruding." She turned toward him, surprise flickering across her features. It was rare for anyone outside the formal diplomatic channels to address her directly. "You are Marcus Chen, the xenobiologist," she stated, her voice carrying an otherworldly musical quality even through the mechanical translation. "I am," Marcus confirmed, encouraged that she knew his name. "I wanted to thank you for allowing us to study your people's remarkable biology. In all my years of research, I've never encountered anything quite so fascinating." The princess tilted her head slightly, a gesture that Marcus had learned indicated curiosity among her people. "What aspect interests you most, Dr. Chen?" Marcus smiled, his nervousness beginning to fade as his scientific passion took over. "Honestly? Your eyes. They're absolutely extraordinary. The way they process light across multiple spectrums, the neural pathways that must be required to interpret such complex visual data, it's beautiful, both scientifically and aesthetically." The words tumbled out before Marcus could stop them, driven by genuine admiration rather than diplomatic calculation. He realized too late that he had just given the alien princess what humans would consider a compliment on her appearance, something that might not translate well across cultural boundaries. Princess Lyralii's multifaceted eyes widened, the swirling colors within them shifting rapidly through patterns Marcus had never seen before. For a long moment, she stood perfectly still, as if his words had somehow frozen her in place. Her guard took a protective step forward, sensing their charge's unusual reaction. I apologize if I said something inappropriate, Marcus stammered, his face flushing red. I meant no disrespect. It was a scientific observation, but I realize it might have sounded. Stop, the princess said quietly, holding up one slender hand. Her voice carried a tremor that the translator couldn't quite mask. What did you say about my eyes? Marcus swallowed hard. I said they were beautiful. Both scientifically and aesthetically beautiful. The princess's breath caught audibly. Around them, her guard exchanged worried glances, clearly as confused by her reaction as Marcus was. In all their years of service, they had never seen their composed, regal leader react with such visible emotion to mere words. No one, the princess whispered, her gaze fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him feel as though she was seeing straight through to his soul, has ever called any part of me beautiful? The simple statement hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Marcus felt his heart break a little at the profound sadness in her voice. Here was someone who commanded the respect of billions, who wielded power beyond imagination, yet she had never received the most basic form of appreciation that humans took for granted. That's impossible, Marcus said without thinking. I mean, with respect, Your Highness, that's genuinely impossible. He gestured helplessly, struggling to find words that wouldn't sound presumptuous. Anyone with eyes can see how remarkable you are. The princess's color shifting intensified, her skin taking on hues that Marcus had never witnessed before. Deeper purple shot through with gold, like aurora borealis made manifest. Her advisors stepped closer, clearly concerned by this unprecedented display. Dr. Chen, she said, her voice stronger now but still carrying that note of wonder, in Zephyrian culture, physical appearance is never discussed. We are valued for our bloodline, our achievements, our adherence to protocol. Comments about personal attributes are considered frivolous. Beneath consideration. Marcus felt a surge of indignation on her behalf. That's terrible. I'm sorry, but that's absolutely terrible. Beauty isn't frivolous, it's one of the things that makes existence worthwhile. Art, music, the sight of a sunrise on a new world, the way someone's eyes light up when they're passionate about something. If we can't acknowledge beauty, what's the point of having consciousness at all? The princess stared at him as if he had just revealed the secrets of the universe. Her retinue watched in stunned silence as their unflappable leader struggled to process this alien concept that beauty could have value, that acknowledging it could be meaningful rather than shallow. Your Highness, one of her advisors ventured carefully. Perhaps we should return to your quarters. The day has been taxing. But Princess Lyralii didn't move. She continued to study Marcus with those incredible eyes, as if trying to understand not just his words but the entire worldview they represented. Dr. Chen, she said finally, would you tell me more about this concept? This idea that beauty has value? Marcus glanced around at the assembled Zephyrians, all of whom looked as though their world had been turned upside down by this simple conversation. He realized that his impulsive compliment had somehow opened a door that had been sealed shut by centuries of cultural conditioning. I would be honored to, Your Highness, he said. Though I should warn you, once you start seeing beauty in the universe, it becomes impossible to stop. It changes everything. For the first time since the conversation began, Princess Lyralii smiled, an expression so radiant that Marcus understood why her people might fear the power of acknowledged beauty. If someone like her ever realized her own worth beyond protocol and bloodline, there would be no stopping the revolution that would follow. Perhaps, she said softly, it is time for everything to change. As they walked together toward a more private meeting space, Marcus couldn't help but feel that he had just participated in something far more significant than first contact between species. He had witnessed the exact moment when an entire worldview began to crack, when someone who had never been allowed to see herself as anything more than a political tool began to understand that she was, in fact, beautiful. Behind them, her advisors followed in worried silence, instinctively understanding that the careful order of their society had just been fundamentally challenged by the simple human concept that every conscious being deserved to be seen, appreciated, and valued for who they were rather than what they represented. #The Revolution, Part 2. 3 days had passed since Marcus's conversation with Princess Lyralii, and the entire dynamic aboard the Horizon's Edge had shifted in ways that neither species could have anticipated. What had started as a simple compliment had evolved into daily discussions between the princess and Marcus, conversations that her advisors watched with growing alarm and fascination. The princess had requested access to human cultural databases, specifically materials related to art, music, and literature. Her retinue reluctantly complied, though they clearly considered such interests beneath her station. Marcus found her in the ship's observation lounge each morning, studying human paintings on a portable display with the intensity of a scholar deciphering ancient texts. "This one," she said as Marcus joined her, pointing to a reproduction of Van Gogh's Starry Night. The human who created this, he saw beauty in simple things like wind and light and made them into something more. Marcus settled into the chair beside her, marveling at how much she had changed in just a few days. The rigid formality was still there, but underneath it was a growing sense of wonder that transformed her entire presence. Van Gogh saw beauty in everything, even when the world told him his vision was worthless. He painted because he had to, because beauty demanded to be acknowledged. The princess traced the swirling patterns on the screen with one long finger. On Zephyr Prime, our artists create only according to established formulas. There are exactly 73 approved color combinations and 42 acceptable forms. Deviation is considered chaotic. "That's not art," Marcus said firmly. "That's decoration. Real art comes from the heart, from seeing something unique in the universe and feeling compelled to share it with others." She looked at him with those incredible eyes, and Marcus noticed that the color patterns within them had become more vibrant over the past few days, as if his introduction to the concept of beauty was literally changing her on a cellular level. "Dr. Chen. Marcus, would you teach me to see the way humans see?" Before Marcus could answer, Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "All senior staff report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. We have a situation." The two of them made their way to the conference room, where they found the human crew assembled alongside the Zephyrian delegation. The mood was tense, and Marcus immediately sensed that something significant had happened. "We've received a priority transmission from the Zephyrian High Council," Captain Rodriguez began without preamble. "It seems word of the princess's new interests has reached the homeworld." Admiral Vorth, the senior Zephyrian advisor, stepped forward. His expression was grim. "The Council is deeply disturbed by reports of Princess Lyralii engaging in discussions about frivolous matters. They have ordered her immediate return to Zephyr Prime for recalibration." Marcus felt his blood run cold. Recalibration? A process by which individuals who have strayed from proper thought patterns are restored to acceptable parameters, Admiral Vorth explained matter-of-factly. "The princess's recent behavior suggests she has been contaminated by human irrationality." Princess Lyralii stood slowly, her newfound confidence wavering in the face of her people's disapproval. "Admiral, I have done nothing but attempt to understand our allies better." "Surely the Council cannot object to diplomatic curiosity." "Your Highness," Admiral Vorth replied coldly, "you have been observed expressing interest in meaningless human recreational activities. You have questioned established cultural protocols. Most disturbing of all, you have begun to display emotional responses to external stimuli, a clear sign of mental degradation." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. In trying to open the princess's eyes to beauty, he had apparently condemned her to some kind of psychological reconditioning. "Wait," he said, stepping forward despite the warning look from Captain Rodriguez. "Princess Lyralii hasn't done anything wrong. She's been learning about our culture, yes, but that's the entire point of this diplomatic mission." Admiral Vorth's gaze turned to Marcus with obvious distaste. "Dr. Chen, your influence on Her Highness has been noted and will be reported to both our governments. The contamination of a royal mind with primitive emotional concepts is a serious matter." "Contamination?" Marcus's voice rose despite himself. "You're calling curiosity and wonder contamination? You're saying that learning to appreciate beauty makes someone mentally ill?" "Enough," Princess Lyralii said quietly, but her voice carried absolute authority. Both species fell silent. "Admiral Vorth, I will not be returning to Zephyr Prime for recalibration." The stunned silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the ship's life support systems. Admiral Vorth's skin shifted to a deep red that Marcus had learned indicated extreme agitation. Your Highness, you cannot simply refuse a direct order from the High Council. I am the heir to the Zephyrian throne, the princess replied, her voice growing stronger with each word. I am not some minor functionary who can be ordered about like a servant. If the council wishes to discuss my recent activities, they may do so through proper diplomatic channels. Admiral Vorth looked as though he might collapse. In their entire recorded history, no member of the royal family had ever defied the High Council so directly. Your Highness, please reconsider. The implications, Princess Lyralia interrupted, are that perhaps it is time for our people to reconsider what we value. For centuries, we have prized conformity above all else. We have eliminated spontaneity, creativity, and individual expression in favor of perfect order. And what has it gained us? She gestured toward the viewport where stars wheeled in infinite patterns. We have built a vast empire, yes. We have achieved technological marvels and perfect efficiency. But when was the last time any of us felt joy? When did we last create something new simply because we were inspired to do so? When did we last look at another being and feel anything more than abstract respect? The assembled Zephyrians shifted uncomfortably. These were questions that their society had systematically eliminated the need to ask. Marcus felt compelled to speak, despite the obvious danger. Your Highness, I never meant to cause problems for you. If my comments have put you in danger, your comments, she said, turning to face him with those magnificent eyes blazing with new purpose, showed me that there is more to existence than duty and protocol. They reminded me that consciousness is a gift, not a burden to be managed and controlled. Admiral Vorth made one last attempt. Your Highness, if you persist in this course, the Council will have no choice but to declare you unfit to rule. They will name your cousin Nyron as heir instead. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across the princess's features. Nyron was everything the council wanted in a ruler, coldly logical, utterly predictable, and completely devoid of imagination. Under his rule, Zephyrian society would continue on its sterile path for another 1,000 years. Marcus watched her internal struggle, knowing that his simple compliment had started a chain reaction that could topple an empire. He wanted to tell her it wasn't worth it, that she should return home and forget about human concepts of beauty and individuality. But he also knew that once someone had tasted freedom, asking them to return to chains was an act of cruelty. Admiral, Princess Lyralia said finally, please transmit the following message to the High Council. I hereby formally request political asylum from the United Earth Government, pending a full review of Zephyrian policies regarding individual rights and freedom of thought. The words exploded through the conference room like a bomb. Several Zephyrians gasped audibly, a display of emotion that would have horrified them days earlier but now seemed perfectly natural. Captain Rodriguez looked as though she might faint at the diplomatic implications. Your Highness, Admiral Vorth whispered, you cannot mean this. You are abandoning your people. No, the princess replied firmly. I am trying to save them. For too long, we have mistaken order for progress, conformity for wisdom. We have built a perfect society that produces nothing but perfect emptiness. She looked around the room at both humans and Zephyrians. Dr. Chen showed me that there is another way. That consciousness without joy is just a more complex form of death. Marcus felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. His casual observation about the princess's beautiful eyes had somehow triggered what might be the most significant political revolution in galactic history. As he looked at her, this incredible being who had chosen freedom over power, uncertainty over safety, he realized that perhaps the most beautiful thing about her wasn't her eyes at all. It was her courage. Admiral Vorth straightened his shoulders and activated his communication device. Very well, Your Highness. I will transmit your message to the High Council. But I fear you have doomed both our species to a conflict that could have been avoided. Perhaps, Princess Lyralia agreed. But some things are worth fighting for. Beauty is one of them. Freedom is another. And the right to choose who we become, that might be the most important battle of all. As the immediate crisis settled into tense diplomatic activity, Marcus found himself wondering what would happen next. The princess had made her choice, but the consequences were only beginning to unfold. One thing was certain, the galaxy would never be quite the same. Hashtag The New Dawn, Part 3. 2 weeks had passed since Princess Lyraliai's asylum request, and the galaxy was watching. News of the Zephyrian heirs' rebellion had spread through the interstellar community like wildfire, sparking debates about individual rights, cultural evolution, and the nature of consciousness itself. The horizon's edge had become the center of a diplomatic storm that threatened to reshape the political landscape of known space. Marcus found the princess in the ship's hydroponics bay, where she had taken to spending hours studying the way plants grew toward the light. She had requested seeds from dozens of worlds, creating a garden that defied every principle of Zephyrian aesthetic control. Flowers bloomed in chaotic riot of colors, vines twisted in impossible spirals, and herbs released fragrances that had no practical purpose beyond their sheer beauty. The council's response arrived this morning, Marcus said softly as he joined her among the growing chaos. Princess Lyraliai looked up from the earth orchid she had been observing, her expression calm despite the gravity of the situation. "And? They've declared you mentally incompetent and named your cousin Lyron as the new heir. They're demanding your immediate return for what they call medical treatment." Marcus paused, struggling with what came next. "They've also issued an ultimatum to Earth. Return you within 72 hours, or they'll consider it an act of war." Instead of the despair Marcus expected, the princess smiled, an expression that had become more frequent and radiant over the past weeks. "How wonderfully predictable. They still don't understand that this isn't about me anymore." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, Captain Rodriguez entered the hydroponics bay with Admiral Vorth and several other Zephyrian officers. The Admiral looked haggard, as if the past weeks had aged him decades. "Your Highness," Admiral Vorth began formally, "I have been instructed to make one final appeal. The High Council is prepared to offer clemency if you return voluntarily. Your condition can be corrected, and you can resume your rightful place." "My condition," the princess repeated thoughtfully. "You mean my ability to see beauty? My capacity for wonder? My growing understanding that life has value beyond mere function?" "Your emotional instability," Admiral Vorth corrected. "Your fixation on meaningless human concepts. Your rejection of everything our civilization has achieved." Marcus stepped forward, unable to remain silent. "Admiral, with respect, what exactly has your civilization achieved? Perfect order? Complete conformity? You've created a society so rigid that the simple act of appreciating beauty is considered a mental illness." "We have created stability," Admiral Vorth replied coldly. "We have eliminated war, crime, and social discord. Our people live in perfect harmony." "That's not harmony," Princess Lyraliai said, her voice carrying an authority that seemed to surprise even her former advisor. "That's stagnation. Harmony implies multiple voices working together to create something beautiful. What you're describing is just silence." Admiral Vorth's skin shifted through patterns of frustration. "Your Highness, I have served your family for over 2 centuries. I have watched your people grow from a small world into a galactic empire. Everything we have accomplished was built on the principles you now reject." "And what will we accomplish in the next 2 centuries?" the princess challenged. "More of the same? Perfect repetition of perfect emptiness?" "Admiral, when was the last time a Zephyrian invented something new? When did we last solve a problem through creativity rather than protocol?" The question hung in the air unanswered. Marcus realized that the princess had put her finger on something fundamental. The Zephyrian Empire had become so focused on maintaining perfection that it had lost the ability to grow. Captain Rodriguez cleared her throat diplomatically. "Your Highness, while Earth is prepared to honor your asylum request, we must consider the broader implications. The Zephyrian fleet is already moving toward our borders. We're looking at a potential war that could devastate both our peoples." "No," the princess said with quiet confidence. "We're looking at an opportunity." She moved to the center of the bay, surrounded by the chaotic beauty of her garden. "Captain Rodriguez, I would like to request permission to make a galaxy-wide broadcast. It's time the people of both our worlds heard the truth." Marcus felt his heart skip. "Lyraliai, that's incredibly dangerous. If you publicly challenge the High Council, then, perhaps it's time someone did," she interrupted gently. "Marcus, you showed me that consciousness without choice is just elaborate slavery. I won't let fear trap me in that cage again. Captain Rodriguez considered for a long moment. Very well, Your Highness. But, I hope you understand what you're risking. I understand exactly what I'm risking, the princess replied. And, I know exactly what I'm fighting for. 3 hours later, every major communication network in the galaxy carried the same signal. Princess Lyralii stood in the ship's observation lounge, with the star field behind her and Marcus at her side. Her advisors watched from the shadows, clearly struggling between loyalty to their princess and loyalty to their government. People of Zephyr Prime, she began, her voice carrying across light years to reach her homeworld. I speak to you today not as your princess, but as someone who has discovered something wonderful, the right to choose who we become. Marcus watched her transformation with amazement. The nervous, protocol-bound royal he had first met was gone, replaced by someone radiating confidence and purpose. For generations, we have been told that emotion is weakness, that creativity is chaos, that individual expression threatens our stability. We have built our empire on the foundation that consciousness is something to be controlled rather than celebrated. She paused, her eyes finding Marcus in the small crowd. But, I have learned something that changes everything. We don't have to choose between order and beauty, between stability and growth. We can have both. The broadcast continued for 20 minutes as Princess Lyralii described her journey of discovery. She spoke about human art and music, about the joy of seeing a sunset for the first time with appreciative eyes, about the simple pleasure of being told she was beautiful. But, more importantly, she spoke about the future, a vision of Zephyrian society that embraced both logic and creativity, order and spontaneity. I do not ask you to abandon everything we have built, she said in conclusion. I ask you to build something more. To create a civilization that values both achievement and happiness, efficiency and wonder. To remember that we are conscious beings, not biological machines, and that consciousness without choice is just another form of death. The transmission ended, leaving the observation lounge in absolute silence. Marcus felt as though he had just witnessed history being made, though he couldn't yet tell whether it was the birth of a revolution or the death of a princess. Admiral Vorth was the first to speak. Your Highness, what you have done today, there is no coming back from this. The High Council will never forgive such a public challenge to their authority. I know, the princess replied calmly. But, perhaps forgiveness isn't what our people need. Perhaps they need a choice. Over the following days, the galaxy held its breath as reports poured in from across Zephyrian space. On 17 worlds, citizens had begun gathering in public spaces to discuss the princess's words. On 5 more, local governors had publicly supported her call for reform. Most shocking of all, 3 members of the High Council itself had requested a formal review of current policies. The revolution Princess Lyralii had started was spreading beyond anyone's expectations. Marcus found her in the hydroponics bay again, but this time she wasn't alone. A dozen Zephyrian officers from her own ship had joined her, marveling at the chaotic garden she had created. Look at this, one young officer said, pointing to a flowering vine that had wrapped itself around a support beam in a pattern that followed no known aesthetic principle but was undeniably beautiful. How did you know it would grow like this? I didn't, the princess admitted. That's the point. Beauty often comes from the unexpected, from allowing things to develop naturally rather than forcing them into predetermined shapes. Marcus approached the group, amazed at how naturally the Zephyrians were embracing concepts their culture had forbidden for centuries. Any word from the fleet? Admiral THYSS has broken formation and is requesting permission to dock, Princess Lyralii reported. It seems my cousin Thyron's first act as heir was to order the summary execution of anyone caught discussing my broadcast. The fleet commanders are reconsidering their loyalties. Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed through the bay. Your Highness, we have an incoming transmission from Zephyr Prime. It's the Empress herself. They gathered in the main conference room, where the massive viewscreen flickered to life with the image of Empress Salandra, Princess Lyralii's mother and ruler of the Zephyrian Empire. Marcus had expected to see cold fury, but instead found something far more complex in the Empress's ancient eyes. My daughter, the Empress said, her voice carrying centuries of weariness. You have created quite a disturbance. Mother, Princess Lyralii replied formally, though Marcus could hear the emotion beneath her controlled tone. "I have simply chosen to speak the truth." The Empress was quiet for a long moment. "Do you know what I was doing before I received word of your revelation?" "No, Mother. I was reviewing the efficiency reports from the agricultural sector. Perfect yields, perfect distribution, perfect compliance with dietary guidelines. Everything precisely as it should be." The Empress's expression shifted slightly. "And I realized that I couldn't remember the last time I tasted food instead of simply consuming nutritionally optimal substances." Marcus felt his breath catch. Even across the vast distance of space, he could see the change beginning in the Empress's eyes, the same awakening he had witnessed in her daughter. "The High Council believes you have been contaminated by human irrationality," the Empress continued. "They may be correct. But, perhaps it is time our people were contaminated with something other than efficient emptiness." The revolution that had begun with a simple compliment about beautiful eyes was spreading to the very heart of the Zephyrian Empire. Marcus looked at Princess Lyralii and saw not just someone who had chosen freedom, but someone who had chosen to share that freedom with an entire civilization. "Tell me, daughter," the Empress said finally, "what is it like to see beauty in the universe?" Princess Lyralii smiled, that radiant expression that had become her signature, and Marcus knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The age of perfect order was ending, and the age of beautiful chaos was about to begin. "It's like waking up, Mother," the princess replied. "It's like discovering you've been sleeping your entire life and, finally, opening your eyes to see that the universe is full of wonders you never imagined." As the transmission ended and plans began for a new kind of diplomacy, one based on growth rather than control, beauty rather than mere function, Marcus reflected on the strange power of simple human kindness. He had only intended to compliment a beautiful woman on her remarkable eyes. Instead, he had helped spark a revolution that would transform the greatest empire in known space. Perhaps, he thought as he watched Princess Lyralii discussing the future with species who were just learning to hope, that was the most beautiful outcome of all.